Good morning, good day, everyone. This is Brian over at Fastman. Thank you for coming. We are just waiting for a few folks to come on into the GoToWebinar setup. Give us 2 minutes. Let's hopefully we'll get a few more folks showing up, and then we'll start the presentation. Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, looks like a few people are rolling in. This is good. We're getting a little audience. That's always nice. Let's give it another minute. Okay, excellent. Yeah, it looks like we're getting a nice audience, folks, just so you know. Okay. So 8:02 on the West Coast, 11:02 East Coast, it looks like. Maybe we should, I think we're ready to get this going. So, yeah. All right, so let's just take it from the top. Good day, everyone, and welcome to another Fastman webinar. This one is Don't Ask Permissions, Use Access Manager. And I'm Brian Lapointe. Hello, everyone. I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues here. I have Alistair Grigg with me today. He's the managing director for Fastman. And I also have Renita Day, who's an expert ECM consultant from the Fastman professional services side of the company here. So excited to have these two folks with us today. And what we're doing is we're speaking about a new product release we call the Fastman Access Manager 2.0. And it's for the OpenText Extended ECM platform, also known as Content Suite, also known as other things over the years, Content Server, even back to LiveLink. But the intent of today's session is really to quickly illustrate how you can control the functions users have access to within your extended ECM system and how that really complements the overall permissions model. Many people know Fastman for how we work with permissions in general, but we wanted to show how you can now have greater control over your functional access, and that really starts to change the way you may be configuring the Content Suite extended ECM platform. So with no further ado, let's kind of get started. And my intent, the first way to start this off is I'm going to go right into doing a couple of polls. So please participate in these polls. This is an interactive opportunity, folks. So I'm going to start with the first one. Just some easy general questions, so nothing too hard. Let me see here, use my GoToWebinar software. Yeah, so the first one, how is your extended ECM system deployed today? Just trying to get a sense. Are you running it on-prem where you got full control, you're the admin on the system? Are you, even if you're thinking of going to the OT cloud within the next few months, that would be the choice there, the actual OpenText cloud, or are you in another cloud and thinking about containerization, whether it's Azure, AWS, or the Google Cloud platform? So looks like it's coming in 50-50. I guess we have that many, yeah, something like that. Yep. So we'll close that one out. So yeah, it looks like interesting. Yeah, about 57% on-prem, and then 43% showing the OT cloud. Fantastic. And no one's mentioning 0% for the for the other clouds and stuff like that. So good to know. Good to know. Let me see here, working my polls. So just trying to get at, are you guys classic or smart UI? Where are your business users? You know, a lot of us that come to these webinars have been running Content Suite, extended ECM for many years, very comfortable with that classic UI. How would you comment? Are you mostly classic, or you see people really just starting living smart UI with OpenText? Looks like responses are coming in. I like to give the feedback real time. So it's showing 80% classic. Well, it went down a little bit. 73% classic, 27% smart UI. You know, more and more I'm seeing more smart UI, obviously, over, or people have the intention to roll it out that way. But you know, you're used to using applications the way you started using them and where you're comfortable. So I'm not saying there's a right or a wrong way to any of that. Just kind of, it's interesting to see the feedback on this webinar. It's like color commentary doing polls. It's like I'm broadcasting a baseball game doing like balls and strikes, right? Here's the last one, I promise. Last poll. Interested too. You know, I see this as like a trend right now within the OpenText community. They got these new X plans they talk about. One of the great benefits to them, they have all the extended ECM integrations. How many of you guys interested? Who's you know, it's really about, are you there? Are you going there quickly? You know, are you using the extended ECM integrations? And yes is like Salesforce, SAP, the Microsoft Microsoft 365 one that they have, or is there another one? And the other would be something like Maximo, or you know, it might be the Dynamics one that's out there. I know there's a Dynamics extended ECM or something else. So 73%. It just dropped down a little bit, but it looks like 67% are the first with the general SAP, and that could be SuccessFactors or S/4HANA, Salesforce, Microsoft. 8%, someone says other, interesting, and then 31% no. And so you know, that just tells me it's traditional running OpenText as your document records management system and so forth. So, which is fine. So that's it for polls. Thanks everyone. As a reminder on the presentation in the GoToWebinar, there is a question section. You got 3 of us here. We're going to be monitoring. I'll be monitoring. So if you have any questions during the presentation at any time, please put it into that panel. Take advantage of that. We like to be interactive as much as possible on these webinars. It's always helpful. And let's just, so we're almost ready to get rolling here, but just moving along. Like you can see right here, we have a nice agenda for you today. Alistair's going to kind of set the table and properly introduce the Access Manager 2.0, as we call it, and then followed by Renita with several business scenarios. She's got some software demonstrations where it kind of will make it more relevant for you, and then we'll take some Q&A at the end too. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Alistair. So Alistair, if you're ready, why don't you just kind of take it away and set the table for us, as I said properly.
Very good. Thanks, Brian. A nice intro, And a big shout out to Brian and Renita and Victoria, who's here as well, for setting this up. And thank you for joining us. I'm going to keep my piece fairly brief so that you don't get distracted, but I'm going to set the scene, as Brian said, do a little bit of introduction, and I'm going to talk about what we call our triangle of trust. And just to clarify, what's the difference between Access Manager and Permissions Manager? Because they're 2 different products, but they work closely together. So let's talk about that in a little bit more detail. And just by way of setting the scene, as you know, Fastman, we work with 15 years. We've been working in this field, in this part of the OpenText ecosystem. We've been doing access control, permissions control, and Permissions Manager itself is coming up to 15 years old. So, and it's probably the most widely used access control product in the OpenText extended ECM content suite world. So very proud of that and very pleased, and we appreciate the support from all of our customers over those times. We work in 4 specific areas, just so you know. Fastman works in 4 specific areas around the OpenText ecosystem, also products. It's all on extended ECM content suite. Excuse me. Today we're going to be focusing on our permissions and access controls. We have other solutions in other areas, and I'm going to touch on where we leverage some of that experience in this product area. And as we go through this presentation. But we start with the premise. That what you guys want and what customers want is a simple way to manage your access controls. So we start with that premise. We say you don't want a complicated world. You want simplicity. You want speed. You want efficiency. All that sort of stuff. You want to minimize risk, and you want it in a structured and managed way. And we think you deserve those tools. And I think I've said this before on these webinars, and it's a message that we keep on reiterating. We believe that you deserve those tools from day one. You don't have to wait. You shouldn't have to deploy a product or live with problems for a long time. You should be able to get it quickly and safely and easily with confidence. And that's what we're about. And the background to that is going back. Some of you would have seen this slide before. I'm not going to spend time on it. Just to say that that's all very good and well. We like things to be simple, efficient, and quick. But the world of open text content suite, extended ECM, the security and permissions components are not simple and easy to navigate. They can be complex. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of pieces interact with each other. So it's not easy sometimes to be able to bring that up into a simple way, but we work hard at it. And hopefully we deliver results and you guys appreciate it. So, and it's becoming more complex. Brian just did the poll about who uses SAP, Salesforce, Microsoft integrations. Obviously, Microsoft these days is pretty much more common, that support. But the SAP and Salesforce is a big deal for our customers, and it's becoming more complex. It's not getting simpler. It's not getting easier. A couple of years ago, as I mentioned, Permissions Manager has been around for a number of years. And if you look at this little diagram here, you can see we call this our triangle of trust. So Permissions Manager has been around for 15 odd years. And as I said, widely used, probably the most widely used access and permissions management tool in the market, in the open text world. A couple of years ago, we had a customer come to us with a requirement to manage read-only access. So if you're an organization that has a combination of full named users and read-only licenses, the traditional way of being able to manage the read-only licenses is through permissions. And that's troublesome. It's complex, and it actually goes directly against that premise we started with about making things simple and easy to manage, because it doesn't. You've got to keep a close eye on it. You've really got to be careful. And there are certain things inside the permissions structure which allow you to sort of bypass those read-only rules. So we built a product called Access Manager, and Access Manager was targeted very much at that use case. And that's why we call this one Access Manager 2.0, because that first version was Access Manager 1.0, and it did just that one thing. As soon as we rolled that out to customers, we were getting other use cases coming through to us that had similar requirements, which meant we could use that product to meet that requirement, but only one requirement. So it was very singular. It would do one thing, and one thing well, and very comprehensively, and in a very safe way. But we couldn't use it for multiple things. And I mentioned before I was going to touch on some other products. So we've got a DocuSign, extended ECM for DocuSign, we call it now, which is an add-on to Content Suite that has an advanced integration with the DocuSign e-signature platform. And in that product, we have a thing called profiles, and we're going to touch on that a little bit later on. So what we did was we took that profile concept and we applied it to Access Manager, and we ended up with Access Manager 2.0. And Renita is going to demonstrate that later on. You're going to see it in action. And the reason it exists is because if you look at the access controls, as I mentioned, was read-only. If you look at access control and permissions control, what permissions does is Permissions Manager manages access at item levels. So it says basically, you can control whether someone can see or see contents or whatever on a particular item or a group of items. And you can do it by user or group or role. What it doesn't do is it doesn't stop you using particular functions in the system. So the difference between Access Manager and Permissions Manager is that Permissions Manager allows you to control the the permissions on specific items. So Brian or Renita or Victoria can see or not see a specific item in the system, and through all the permissions management functions, you're able to manage that very quickly and easily. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't stop you actually using a function in the system. So it says, okay, I don't want that person to be able to, for example, download a document. I don't want that person to be able to open a document, or sometimes they've got CC contents access, but even then, in certain circumstances, certain situations, they shouldn't be able to download it. They shouldn't be able to delete it or replace it or update the metadata. And that can be based on a process, or it can be based on policy. There's a whole bunch of different scenarios, and as I mentioned, Renita's going to show you how that works. So what that does, I should have built this out beforehand. So it's just to reiterate, permissions and roles is what a user or group or role can do on an item level, a document, a folder, a workspace, a workflow, this sort of thing. Access control, access manager, is what functions a user or group can execute regardless of the data or feature they're using. So it doesn't matter whether they're accessing it via a mobile device, they're on a web browser, they're on Enterprise Connect, whatever it might be, through an integration, if they're coming through an extended ECM, SAP or Salesforce. So it's a function, think of it that way. And of course, off to one side, we've still got the object and usage privileges. So these are the features, this is what defines what features a user can use, whether they're able to use a particular feature in the system across, and what object types they can create. And also on top of this, we've also got your records management functionality. We don't interfere with that at all. That still continues. Again, it's more closely aligned to the item level control than it is to the person rather than the functions. But we can talk about that separately if you're interested. But that's what Access Manager is all about. It's about managing the functions in the system. Oops, I think I had more slide here. So just building out on that a little bit more, Permissions Manager is a dashboard view. You'll be familiar with all those functionality that we've got around permissions management. So we're not here today to talk about that in any real detail, but if you don't have Permissions Manager and you'd like to see it, let us know. It's really, really strong. And Access Manager, as I said, is controlling what users or groups can execute regardless of the feature or the data. And we'll show you how that can be controlled through the profiles that I mentioned before. So we're very, very happy. So here are the profiles. I think, Brian, I'm handing back to you at this point. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. We're almost there. We're almost there to the demo. So get your popcorn ready, right? So yeah, thank you for that. Excellent. I mean, that sets the table. I mean, that's the important thing. What's the difference between Permissions Manager and Access Manager? So thank you for sharing that. You know, it's really at that functional level. And you know, always welcome the point of view that you have, Alistair. I know that you've been working with the platform since the early days and when it was known as LiveLink, and you just been participating in the evolution as a valuable open text partner. You know, as Alistair mentioned, there's essentially no way in Content Server to essentially deny functions to users or groups. So what we did was we borrowed a software concept that we use with the Fastman digital signatures, which is our DocuSign connector product that we have, and it's known as profiles. When it comes to e-signature, we have signature profiles. When it comes to this access, we have functional access profiles is what we give you. And based on your business scenario, we can basically create rules that are triggered when specific categories or classifications or the location or even the file MIME type are met. So you can configure these business scenarios, and you can have multiple profiles running in your Content Server instance for different scenarios too. So you can really now start to keep people in the application and not have to worry about other ones. Alistair, could you just move it to the next slide real quick for me? I appreciate it. So what we do is we provide you with a simple administrative interface to configure, and we're going to see these in the demo, but interface to configure and manage these profiles, and it lets you assign them to groups or even custom configure your error message to eliminate any unnecessary calls to your help desk. So if the rule is met, they get a nice little descriptive screen that you can customize, saying, hey, you're not allowed to do this for the following reason. And you can change that on the fly too. So a few examples include the classic scenario where you want to enforce that read-only licensing. You may have purchased a quantity of these lower cost license types from OpenText, but then realize there's really not a good way to enforce it in the system. And what happens is it opens you up to a compliance risk at time of audit, maybe down the line sometime. So Access Manager lets you configure a read-only rule and assign it to a group of users. These read-only users, problem solved, right? It's easy as that. Furthermore, you may have a controlled business process in Content Server where you are guiding your users, through this process, right? Wouldn't it be nice if you could also enforce by rule the ability to prevent download in a certain step, or edit, or unreserve, don't allow them to unreserve the document at a certain time in the process, or even delete of items, even regardless of what their permission settings are. It's really in this step of the process, in this location, regardless of your permissions, I don't want these functions to be enabled. That's what the rule lets you do, and this is where Access Manager becomes invaluable for you. When you really think about it, the scenarios are practically unlimited, I guess. And this approach, what I kind of look at this as, this approach lets your business users live longer, live better within Content Server, extended ECM, without having to introduce, a third part, possibly another third-party workflow tool or a BPM tool to handle situations, or a lead application. You really can use the goodness of the extended ECM system because you can rely on the out-of-the-box functionality that's there. So often we seem to be plugging some gaps with some other system, and then the complexity of everything goes up. So that's my spiel at this point. I'd like to hand it off to Renita. Renita, if you want to come on camera, I'd love to see your smiling face, and let's see if I can hand off. See if I can make you the presenter at this point. I think I just did it. Magic. And if you want to share your screen. So having trouble hearing you, Renita? Yeah, your headset.
Am I audible?
Try it again. Can we hear you? Can you speak? I thought we heard you, Renita.
Hello.
No? I think we can hear you. Test it out.
Okay, that's good. Okay, and I'm trying to share my screen. Okay, I think you can see my screen.
We can see the admin for Content Suite.
Yep, that's right. That's where I wanted to start today. Okay. Anyways, so hello everyone. Sorry about that network glitch that I had for a second there. I hope I'm back and audible to everyone. So let's get started with the demo, or as Brian was telling, I hope you have your popcorn with you. Okay, and thanks Alistair for setting everything up for me, and Brian for explaining the profile. So I'll go from there and start explaining the few scenarios that we have set up, right? So what is Fastman Access Manager 2.0, right? It's nothing but a module that you can install in your content server. That's one-time setup that you need. And like any other content server module, it's an OScript module which you can install and configure from your admin pages. And basically, once you have done the basic administration, you don't really need any restarts, when you are changing your profiles or doing any changes or creating a new profile, right? Everything can be done from the admin pages, and you can do a real check of whether they are behaving the way you want it in the system. So I have a few scenarios set up here, and I will go one by one. So the first scenario that Alistair and Brian mentioned was the read-only licenses, right? That's how the module or the product was launched initially, right? So I just wanted to give a very quick overview of what that means. So here I have a whitelist profile. Basically, it takes you to the admin page. I just kept it here so that I don't need to go in the admin pages and show you multiple things. I'm just launching the admin page from here, right? You can enable or disable the profile at any time, give it a name that you want, and then you should have a group of users that you have allocated the read-only licenses, like I have done here. And then you just configure the list of allowed functionalities that they are, they can do in the system. So basically remove everything where they can edit, delete, reserve, unreserve, do any workflow features, maybe in Smart UI, do anything like, again, add, delete, anything of those sort. Keep only the functions which are read-only, for example, download, maybe zip and download, things like that. And what happens is when the user logs in and tries to do something from these functionalities, they would be able to do that. Anything else would be restricted. So a good example of that would be, I have a read-only user up here that you can see. And I'm going to very quickly launch Permission Manager. And you can see, hey, I don't have access to Permission Manager up here, right? The reason I was doing that was I wanted to show you something interesting. So if you just rely on content server permission, as Alistair was telling, to maintain the permission of a user, sometimes it can be possible that someone gives the read-only person an access that they're not supposed to have. For example, delete a document or edit a document. And that's what happened here. So I have this certification folder. And if I launch Permission Manager, apply my read-only, you can see I have a lot of permission which I shouldn't have, right? So retrospectively, when there's an audit, this is going to cause you problem, right? So a way in which we'd like to stop it is, even though they have full permission here, and if I launch the function menu for this user, you can see I have a lot of things, but I won't be able to do any of that because it's been blocked by my module, right? So if I launch it here, you can see that I get a good error message. I can set this error message from the pages as well. And it gives me a clear instruction that, hey, you're not allowed to do this because there's a restriction set by the admin and you're not supposed to do this function. And like, if you have any questions, maybe contact this person from your organization to get more details or get that elevated licenses, right? So it proactively make sure that your compliance is maintained within the system, right? And this is like an allow list rather than a deny list. So only these functionalities are allowed for this set of users. So very simple, very basic, but helps you a ton when it comes to compliance and making sure that users are not doing anything that they are not supposed to, right? Brian, you want to add something? Alistair, you want to add something?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Good.
Doing well, Rita.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now let's go to the second one, which I have set up for control documents, and it can be for maybe FDA compliance environment, maybe life sciences healthcare, where they do a lot of control documents, right? And you can see here that I have a workflow-based solution where the original copies in the native formats are added to the system. And they should actually go through a workflow process first, right? And during that workflow process, if I have to make any changes, I would do that as an author, and then maybe a reviewer and approver would approve them, and then they will be released in the release document. Up here, once a document is up for a second round of review, maybe I'll start a second round of review, and I'm not supposed to add versions here because the documents up here are basically documents which have gone through a release cycle and published, right? So I don't want people to go here and add documents or add versions which are not compliant with the process that you have set. And then I have the obsolete folder as well, where the release documents which have completed their review cycle or retention cycle will come on the side. Up here also, I want the documents to stay for the retention period. And then again, a workflow should be there, which will review if the document is good to be obsoleted and deleted from the system. And then I want to delete it, right? So a simple thing. If I give a reserve access to a person, they can add, they can reserve, they can unreserve, they can start a workflow, they can do DocuSign. A lot of things are possible, right? But I want to have that control in my system for this particular process. I want all my version add to be done from the workflow and not from the UI because I want that process in, right? But to start the workflow, I need reserve access. So it's a catch-22 situation, right, for me to set this up as a developer, as a consultant, or as an admin. So what do we do here? So I have a nice profile up here that you can see is the work in progress or the original copy document. I have a category, so something that Brian was mentioning during his profile page, that you can set up categories. I also have the location. I can have more than one location as well. I can have MIME types. So if a release document is going to be a PDF and you want to avoid that, maybe you can just skip the MIME type. But if you have like a Word, Excel or something like that, you can keep those MIME types in. You have something like rule matching. Do you want to match just one rule or all the rules? So you can do that. And then you have the group membership. So for which set of users does this profile apply? So this, for me, it is the document controller group up here, right? And then I'm giving the set of functionalities which are denied. So it's a little different from the whitelist profile where you were allowing a functionality. Up here, you are denying a functionality. So even though the user will have reserved and unreserved rights, they won't be able to do it, right? And then you can give an error message, for example, it's a control document, so you're not supposed to do it, right? So now let me launch Permission Manager up here very quickly, just to show you the access. And then I'll go from there. So document controller, oh, they have full permission, right? So they should be able to do everything. Now let me launch the same thing from the document controller view. So I've switched my profile, the Chrome profile actually, and then I'm just launching my control document folder from here, right? So I just created this document in the morning for the demo. And you can see here that if I try to like reserve it or something, I get an error message, even though I have access to do that, right? So you're not allowed to do it because there's a restriction. And this was the error message that I had configured in the profile. So you are able to stop a reserve. But I still, if I want to do changes, I want to start a workflow, right? So what I can do up here is initiate document workflow. And then you see here that I have that access because I have the reserve permission. And let me launch Smart UI. I know we had that 60-40% ratio, so I just want to show it here as well. You can see up here. Maybe just let me do this way, it's easier. You see here, I got a message that is failed. Maybe if I want to add a version, oh, you should see my download, right? You can see it has failed. You can see that, oh, you are not able to do it for this profile. But if I start a workflow, which eventually will reserve the document. So this is my start review workflow. And just going to give some dates, right? You can see the workflow is started, right? And as part of the workflow, I'll be able to reserve the document as .controller1, and it would like go on, right? So if I show you an example up here, you can see here that, you know, the reserve did happen from .controller1. So you still maintain that audit, but you are making sure that you don't like reserve it in the UI, right? You are following the process. So an interesting thing that Alistair said when we were showing this internally was, how do you make sure that your people are following the process if you have defined something, but the system is not allowing you to do that? So you can set things up like this so that, you know, you force the user to follow the process. And I'm sorry I took your words, but I think that was an interesting observation.
That's what I came on to say. I think it's a good point, Renita. You're closing the back doors. You're stopping people getting around your process and actually doing what you set out to do in the first place. So thank you for saying that. I'll get out of your way again. Thanks.
Okay, and same thing for like obsolete. I want to delete the document, but by a workflow. So if I like try to delete it from here, it will not allow me. and then I can start the workflow again from here. I'll not show the whole process because it's very similar to what we did, but you get the gist of it. And maybe I'll just give you a very quick overview of the profile up here. So that was my original. So we can see I've kind of like, I don't want people to edit the attributes as well. I want them to edit the attributes in the workflow. So I'm even, disabling anything related to edit attribute, reserve, unreserve. You can see up here, I don't want them to change the attribute of a version as well. So I want to avoid that. So I did that. And then there are two things from the Smart UI that I'm also doing. The put one will stop the reserve and then category changes as well, right? So an interesting way, and if I want to change something up here, I can do it and I don't really need to do any restarts, right? So that was scenario number 2. And now let's go and have a look at scenario number 3, which I think Brad likes a lot. So let's give that a try. And that's an HR block scenario, very common, right? For this, I want to first launch my employee folder. It's a John Doe folder, as you can see here. And I have 3 folders up here. I just want to show one folder right up front, and it has a copy of some personal document that were taken from the employee when they joined, maybe just for verification purpose. So the SSN document is there, their signed offer letter is there, and their university degree is there. And some of them have some PII information in the document, right? What I've done here is you can see that this one has been classified as a security document. This is not a security document. This is more like an employee condition document. But the SSN document is a security document. So you can, if I hover on the screen, you can see that under personal management, it is security records management related to an issue of security pass or something like that. Same thing for the university part as well. So 12.16.2 and 12.16.1 are related to security. The other one is just an offer letter, right? And they also have the stock type classification for now. Let me go open up the profile up here. So I think I opened a few more. So it's an HR block. I have the category. I have the 2 classification, the 12.6.1 and 2. And I don't have any location because I could have given the location where my employees are there, but it is possible that my employees are in more than one location. So depends upon how you have set up your extended ECM SuccessFactors or whichever system you're using, right? I'm selecting all the MIME types. And for human resources folder, I don't want them to add any new versions to it because I don't want them to overwrite the file with something else. I also don't want them to reserve the documents or probably download the document as well, right? So with that being said, let's go back to our doc controller. Oh, sorry, that's the read-only user. And up here, products, blacklist profile, and let me launch the employee from here. So again, the same folder up here, personal documents. You can see the document up here. And if I do a download, even though I have full permission, which I didn't show you, I can show you that as well. But if I'm getting the download button, that means I have the permission, right? But I really can't download this document or the university document. I have another file in here, which is the offer letter, and that was not marked with the classification for security. And so you can see I have able to download it without any problem, right? And if I really want to avoid that, I could have added the classification in the profile. No restart required. It would take care of it immediately, right? Same thing for Smart UI. Up here, you can see that's my workspace, John Doe. and then the personal document up here. And let me do a download, and you can see it has just showing you a failure messages. It depends upon how the code is written by OT for these modules, so you may see an error message up top, or it might be part of the screen again with a failure message, right? And then if I try to add a version also, I think I've said it should not be allowed to do that. So maybe I've allowed, yeah, you can see I've failed it. So you can see it's been failed because an HR block has been applied, right? So very useful error messages as well. So yeah, this way, even though this person had access, we kind of made sure that, hey, you can't do this action because I've placed a block up in my profiles, right? And you can create as many profiles as you want for users and groups, and then you'll be able to do it. So you can see I did have CC content, and this allows me to at least see the categories and make sure the document is there, but doesn't allow me to download it, right? So yeah, these were the 3 scenarios I wanted to show. Yeah, please feel free, Brian and Alistair, to add something, but I'll stop sharing, and I think we can see if there are any questions and things like that.
Sure. That's a good looking permissions dashboard. We do have a few questions that came in during the session though, Renita. So if you want to kind of cover them off right here. But I do like how you compare and contrast like what's going on with it, how the permissions are set up versus what's actually happening in the system. And then I think the scenarios I get from customers that they've been running Content Suite for a while, and they want to basically at some point kind of eliminate some bad behavior in the system. They know the things that their users are doing, and they come to us and say, how can we deny this situation? They give the scenario where they might have some bad behavior. Maybe they're uploading specific type of file types they don't want them to, or in a certain location, or like I said, the act to be able to download, right? So here's a good question for you, Renee. Can we have different rules for different set of users in the same location?
So you can create like 2 profiles, and both the profiles can have the same functionality and the item rules, but in the group you can create 2 different groups. So for one set of users, you may have one set of functionalities blocked, and for the another set of users, you will have like another set of functionalities blocked. So you can kind of arrange that in with 2 different profiles. That's what I did with my control documents. I had 3 profiles, right? So
I got another profile question. When you're configuring them, do you have to restart them? How responsive is that? Nobody likes to restart, obviously.
No, you don't need to restart it. So what we do is we kind of make sure that once you kind of like change anything in the profile, the system knows that there is a change, and then without the restart, it will kind of take that data up from the profile configuration and do an immediate effect across all the threads and across all the content server instances that you're running. So yeah, no restart required, but the effect is immediate.
Okay. Can you restrict access to content based on attributes? Like deny the download or print functionality?
Yes, so you can do that. So you can set up a you meant category, right? Category attribute.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can do it at a category level. We don't have anything right now to say if X value is Y, then this profile gets applied. But if the category is present, then you can configure that, and anywhere in the system across enterprise, if that category is applied, that profile will apply for that set of users which are configured in the profile. So yeah.
And that's a natural progression for the product, isn't it, to go down to the attribute level?
Yep.
Just didn't feel it was essential for day one.
Someone's asking about how do you know what the read-only, what functions are you blocking for read-only access?
Okay, So that's a good one. We do have a list of functionalities that we get from the system, and we had reviewed that, and we provide you a sample list of functionality that you should put in your read-only profile. So you can review that with us, and we'll help you in figuring out if you have an additional module which is not part of the list that we are doing. We can review that with you, and we have done that with one customer at least, and given them that list which we think would best suit the needs. So it comes with a predefined function list, but if you have something additional, we can always review.
I got a interesting one here, or a specific one. Can you restrict access? And I'm not sure. Can you restrict access to certain property tabs within Content Suite, like the audit tab?
Oh yeah, we can. We can. So
that was a risky question.
So if you go to audit tab, the action, so I think it's an admin who is asking the question, so I can go it in a little bit technical details about it, right? So there are request handler, OBJ actions, and REST APIs, right? So if I'm not wrong, the audit tab is actually OBJ action, right? And that comes as part of the list of functionality that we have. So just put that functionality, and then the data ID is based on your item profiles that you have. So based on that, you can restrict the audit tab, and same thing goes on for the REST APIs as well. So whichever REST APIs brings the audit information, just block that for a set of user.
Oh, even I didn't know that.
That's a good one. There's all these little back doors, Alistair, as you said, right?
Yeah, I know. Really.
Yeah, it just makes it more useful. I got a couple other questions. People asking about what's the install like? Is it a heavy install? What does it take to install and configure Access Manager and Content Server?
Install it on all your instances. So just put that in the staging, use your admin.index page to install it. Once you have done that, there's a license key that we will provide you. So you apply that license key, and then there are a few set of tables that you need to click. So click, 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 and the tables are created. So when I do it, I can do it in like less than 5 minutes, and I'm up and ready. And then I start configuring the profile. So that's where you will spend more time, and I think that's where you should spend more time, because that's your critical operation blocks that you're doing. So install is pretty much very straight. Any admin can do it, and very quick and easy.
Great. Well, that's all I have on my side here. I don't know if there's anything else people want to share. Alistair, Renita, any other closing comments? We'll give the time back to the audience.
Yeah, I wanted to say one more thing. I really enjoy seeing the demo, Renita. It's always good to see it in action, see the use cases. And I was just reflecting on where we started and where we ended up with. You've got use cases, and we were working within Content Suite or extended ECM itself. And if we think about those leading applications, the SAPs and Salesforces and Microsofts of the world, and how they interact with extended ECM as well. I just wanted to make the point that it's the same thing for those systems. So if you've got roles coming through from SAP, for example, or Salesforce, and they're coming through and adding permissions or adding access to content within the open text environment, within the extended ECM environment, then Access Manager is your single point of control. So it doesn't matter where it's coming from. If it's coming out of another application makes inappropriate change to permissions or addition to permissions via a role or a group or even explicit user access. If you've got Access Manager set up properly, it's going to block that, and it's going to give you that central point of control, which is the whole point of Content Suite as an extended ECM platform, as your single point of truth. So it gives you a place to go to control the stuff. So it gives you, I think, it gives you gives organizations much more confidence and comfort that they have got those controls in place. I think make the point that Access Manager, I was sort of blown away when we started exploring what you could use it for and how much value you get out of it. It was amazing to me. We hadn't done it before, to be honest. But now that we've got it and we start to see it being used by customers in real world situations, you can see that the value that you can get from it. That was all I was going to say. But those leading applications, that's a really important use case for a lot of people these days.
I agree. I was thinking the same thing about extended ECM integrations, right? You know, you get the basic functionality, but we even had the one question that came in about the audit that, you know, you maybe getting access to it, but then they can drill down into all that functionality and find out things maybe you don't want them to have access to based on that role that's granting to them. So it's going to help you deploy safely in a controlled environment your extended ECM integrations.
Absolutely.
So great. Well, thanks everyone out there. We looks like the audience hung with us through the whole session. I know spending an hour is valuable. But again, you know, we're available to talk with you about this scenario. Anything to do. This is our wheelhouse. Access, permissions, the Content Suite platform. Come to Fastman. Happy to have a discussion with you with our experts and help you to use the platform in a more meaningful way. And with that said, thank you and have a great day, and we'll be talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.